Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coaching the Bible. This is episode 197, season 4, episode 37. Portion of the week is known as Shlach. It is the fourth portion in the fourth book of the 5 books of Moses, and it happens to be the portion that I read at my bar mitzvah all bazillion years ago that it was back in 1988. Our topic of the week is Managing Dissension. Managing Dissension. I think it'll be an interesting topic for everybody. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a good week so far, and I hope you're going to have a great weekend ahead of you. Let's get right to it. Win of the week and our learning of the week. Win of the week this week for me was simply just from a business standpoint, the opportunity to sort of lean in on a couple of technology pieces that I had been interested in learning, that I've been interested in implementing, and starting to do so. I'm not sure it's meaningful to a lot of people out there, but integrating different technologies and having things sort of flow together and work together and automate, and that efficiency for me is just beautiful. And I really just get something out of having that sort of just flow, just one to the next, having figured it out, set it up, and have it go is just something sort of this serenity about it that I really, really like and appreciate. So that's the win of the week. These are some of the things that I've been sort of holding back on, waiting on to get to, and now I'm leaning in a little bit on some of those things as well, which is really, really great. The learning of the week here is maybe a win too, but simply just appreciating all the things that are good in life and really just taking in the moments and being appreciative and being grateful and enjoying them slowly and taking the time to be present in those moments with everybody around you that you care about, that you love, that you want to be around, and really just enjoying their presence, their company, and all things that are good around them. That is a really simple learning for this week. If I may just take a moment at the beginning, because it's the portion that I read at my bar mitzvah, someone asked me this week if I remember what I spoke about at that bar mitzvah when I had a chance to give a speech, and actually I do. It was a long time ago, 36 years ago at this point, and I spoke about the verse in the portion which says that the land is very, very good. And I think it's important at the outset here, this is a little bit soapboxy, but and a little bit different than what we normally do here on the podcast, but to remember and to remind ourselves that this land is a very, very good land, and the people of this land are very, very good people, and it is a blessing of blessings to live in a time, to live in a place, and to live in this place at this time. It was not always true. It was not always a given. It was not always something that was possible, but it is today. And I am blessed to have the opportunity to live in this land, the land that if I had the opportunity to go back 100 years, 200 years and talk to ancestors and tell them what a time it would be like to live in the land of Israel that we had been dreaming of and praying for 2,000 years, and it's true and it's real and it's ours. The land is good. The people are good. We're in the midst of an incredibly difficult, brutal situation in this war. It doesn't get easy. It doesn't let up. The tensions and the stresses and the pressures around it only sort of feel like they tighten a little bit and they get worse as the North gets worse and as the South sort of moves in a certain direction with, I would say, an uncertain ending that seems to be coming to the fore in this moment. But remember and appreciate that we are a good people, that this is a good land. This country has brought incredible blessing to the world, as have our people over the course of the millennia, the centuries, the years, the months, the weeks, and the days, up until and including today. That is my soapbox. We're talking today on the subject of managing dissension. And I want to zoom in on a very small vignette in this week's portion and highlight this concept of managing dissension. Dissension and dissenting opinions are vital and important. The Talmud is replete with all kinds of dissenting opinions. We don't just get the opinion of the person who is deemed to have the law follow him. We get the disagreements. We get the dissenting opinion. We get the quarrel. We get the discussion. We get the argument. We get both sides of the argument all of the time. And even sometimes the dissenting opinion, maybe it's the opinion that wins. Maybe the dissenting opinion is the opinion that loses. But it's very important to appreciate the value and the benefit of dissenting opinions. Adam Grant, famous organizational psychologist, professor at the Wharton School of Business and author of many, many books and one of the great TED Talks of all time, said the following: dissenting opinions are useful even when they're wrong. So instead of speaking to highly agreeable audiences, target suggestions to people with a history of originality, i.e., a history of dissension. It's important to always appreciate the dissension. But it's also important to appreciate the difference, as Dwight Eisenhower said, to not confuse honest dissent with disloyal subversion. And it is upon the leaders to figure out, when is it honest dissent? When is it simply disagreement? When is it simply just an opposing view? And when is it more sinister and disloyal subversion that's going on? And so what I wanted to dive into today is the story known in Hebrew as the story of the Ma'apilim, which is in the 14th chapter, near the end of the 14th chapter of the book of Numbers. In English, you might call them the defiers. It's a band of people. The size and scope of the group of people we don't exactly know, who defy the decree that was just put upon them to be in the desert for 40 years, that they would die in the desert. This little vignette, 4 or 5 verses, has incredible learning and teaching in it about leadership, about management. And our focus today specifically is on the issue here of managing dissension. Understanding and appreciating what happens when there's resistance on the team, when there are vocal opinions on the other side, when action seems to be about to be taken that's going to be in direct opposition to what it is that you as the leader are recommending, you as the leader are putting into action and into place. So take for a minute the following real world scenario, and then let's apply it back to the story. You're the CEO of a small, mid-sized company. Let's say you're in high tech. Your industry is rapidly changing. So the new AI, let's say innovation and revolution is rapidly affecting your business. And now you have to pivot your business from hardware manufacturing, let's say, to some sort of cloud-based service to stay competitive. Let's say you're in the content business. So for, 20, 25 years, you did content a certain way. You wrote articles in newspapers. You did, infomercials on television. And now you see the wave of the bajillion podcasts that are out there, people posting all kinds of content on YouTube, most of it bad, some of it good. And now you have to adapt to this. And so your decision as the leader will require you to pivot, will require then the dissolution of certain jobs, salaries, new roles, maybe moving, closing an office, and the team is resistant to all of this for a whole host of reasons. They don't like the stress that it's causing. They don't like the future that it portends to bring to the company. They simply just want to work. And now you're causing all of this confusion and disrupting what's going on. And they start to organize against the changes that you want to make. How does that work? I remember a few years ago, there was a project at the company that we got into that a lot of people disagreed with. It was brought to the team, the senior team, to decide whether to participate or not to participate, or to run with it or not to run with it. A lot of people had very strong opinions against it. I was one of those people who had very strong opinions against it. But the CEO decided that we were doing it. And so we did. And it didn't go down well. And it had, I would say, tentacles that lasted extended period of time in terms of the impact that it made on the team, the feelings that it fostered and brewed on the team. And now that's you in this situation. And that's you in the situation in the desert. Because the story here is the following. 14th chapter, the end of the 14th chapter, the people were just informed that they're going to be spending 40 years in the desert. They are not going to go into the land of Israel. Their children will be the generation that goes in. They just witnessed the death of the spies other than Caleb and Joshua. And they're a wreck. Absolute pandemonium wreck. Tears, crying, anguish, pain. They're mourning, the Bible tells us. And so in that period of mourning, they make a decision. Drastic, but a decision. They are not going to accept the decree that God has brought to them. They're going to defy the decree. They're not going to listen. They're going to go up and they're going to take the land. They're going to defy logic. They're going to defy odds. They're going to defy Moses. They're going to defy God. And they're going to go do it. We'll get into it a little bit more in just a couple of moments. Moses tells them it's a terrible idea. Don't do it. He warns them. He tells them about the strength of the nations that are against them. He tells them that the ark will not be with them, that God will not be with them. This will be a disaster. And they go anyway. They get up early the next morning. They go up to the mountain to fight, to take the land, and they lose rather dramatically. So it's an interesting thing. You have this dissension in the camp. You have this decree. You have Moses responding. You have the people in open rebellion, defiance of Moses' words. Therefore, you have the two sides of this story. You have the people's side of it, the people's perspective, and Moses' perspective. And in the same way that we sort of did it last week, I would sort of do it this week is, how do we understand what happened? One, what does that teach us about managing dissension? And in your own situations, at work, in your community, in your house, there's that trip that no one in your family wants to take, but you decide you're going. And every kid in your house finds an excuse. Everyone has a reason not to go, but you're going. How do you handle that? How do you get people to do that when they don't want to, when they disagree, when they're adamant, when they're angry, when they're basically in open rebellion? So let's start from the people's perspective. Let's really understand where they're at. As the story opens, the people have acknowledged their sin. They sinned, they acknowledged the sin, they shouldn't have listened to the spies, they shouldn't have accepted the spies' perspective, they shouldn't have mourned over that vision of what was going to be. They did. So there's some level here of repentance at play. They're admitting the sin. Clearly they're not going to do it again. And now they want to take corrective action. So corrective action is a proactive step towards showing God, showing Moses that, no, we want the land. We want to go to the land. We want to be in the land. And so they go. Are they driven by positive feeling for the land? Maybe. Are they driven by guilt, desperation? Maybe. But there is this perspective. Can we understand where they're coming from? Again, not judging what they did before, just simply understanding them in this moment in this story. I think so. They're acknowledging the sin, and so they're admitting to the previous mistake. They're trying to realign, rejigger themselves and realign and get in line with Moses and, by extension, with God. They want to take some sort of corrective action, which is part of the repentative process, to correct the mistake. They are under the impression that they can undo this decree. It wouldn't be the first time that a decree against them perhaps has been undone. It would be the first time that the people of Israel defy the odds. And maybe, when God sees them go, and God sees that they are serious, that God will undo the decree. As it were, God will change God's mind, and then the people will be allowed to rectify this disobedience, rectify the situation, and go and take the land. From an emotional standpoint, they're remorseful for their lack of faith, and they're clearly desperate on some level for what had, to do something here, to take a drastic measure, to take a drastic action. You can sense it, you can feel it. Psychologically, they're broken. And so, having been, weeks away from entering the land, and now they're 40 years, sort of like, when you think about, there's this concept called the goal proximity effect. It's sort of how close you are to a goal and how far you have to go to get to the goal, and then suddenly the goal moves, right? Imagine this, you're dribbling a basketball, or you hit a baseball, or you're running, a 10K, and you think you're at the 10th K, and suddenly the finish line has been moved another 5 miles or 5 kilometers. So that is disheartening, disillusioning, and creates just a high level of dissonance and desperation around the people. And so here, where they fail to fully trust in God, and now they simply don't want to hear what the new directive is, they're basically in some sort of moment of direct rebellion. And so in this moment, when they're stuck between these sort of feelings and these emotions, they're applying a quote from Brene Brown, I haven't quoted in a while, which is this: you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot have both. And so the Israelites here chose to act. It's not comfortable. On some level, it's courageous. Might not be the smartest thing in the world, because they're defying Moses, defying God. They're misdirected, but they're going. And it's a disaster. It's a disaster. But we can appreciate where they're coming from. We can understand where they're at. That's one side. The other side, we may go a little bit long today, but I hope you're okay with that. Other side is Moses. He's the leader. He took them out of Egypt. He took them to Sinai. He took them into the desert. He's been their teacher, built the tabernacle. We know the deal. And he tells them straight up. Verse 41. He says, "Why are you doing this? It will not work. Don't go up. God is not with you. The ark is not with you. The enemies that are standing against you are very strong, and they will beat you." That's his warning. How do we understand what Moses is feeling, what Moses is saying? So first, it's a very clear warning. It's open warning. Hey guys, look, you're defying God here. This is a bad idea. It does not have divine support. It does not have God behind it. There are going to be consequences, and you're not going to like the consequences here. He's trying to get them to come back into alignment and being obedient and to follow in the path that God has set out for them, to appreciate the new command of God versus the prior command of God. This is the plan. This is the future. There's no way around it. And he's concerned for their well-being. He's concerned for their physical well-being about being attacked and being destroyed. He provides a very logical and very understandable argument about why this is going to fail. And he tried to use his authority as the leader to guide them into a different direction. And so he displayed certain leadership qualities here protective leadership, rational, logical decision-making, a spiritual faithfulness and unwavering faith in God and the divine command and what the plan is going to be. Makes a lot of sense. He's very transparent with them about what's going to happen. He tells them how it's going to play out. And this is what happens. And it works. And it doesn't work. They don't listen. They still go. There's something commendable about them going. Some of the commentaries even say the fact that what did they think was going to happen here? What did they think that they got up early in the morning, it says in verse 40, to go up? They thought maybe that they were doing a positive act, a positive commandment, the fulfillment of a positive commandment of going up and living in the land. They thought that they could have a chance at repentance here, a chance of fixing what they had broken. It doesn't work. It's a disaster. They lose. They spend 40 years in the desert. None of them, including Moses, none of them go into the land. And so take you back to that real world example where you're the leader in this small tech company that's going through this transition, or you're taking the family on a road trip that they simply don't want to go on. This is open defiance and open dissension in the camp. So what do you do? How do you do that in a way that maybe avoids the disaster, that maybe steers the dissenting opinion in a direction where the opinion is heard, the feelings are understood, and yet the disaster doesn't happen? They don't have to go up and fight, as the text says, the Canaanites and the Amalekites. I mean, God, another war with the Canaanites and the Amalekites? Give me a break, right? So what could they have done differently? What could Moses maybe have done differently? Now, what Moses did was what Moses did. It's a good approach. He's very open, he's very honest with them. But put yourself in his shoes. Put yourself into a similar scenario. How might you have done it differently? And so what I will tell you here is I'm going to give you a 5-step process that I'm going to call trust that I think is really important here. Trust stands for transparent communication, recognizing the emotions, unity through involvement, sharing a clear vision, and trust building. Trust building. Okay, you're going to have to give me the credit there. But what's really important here is really communicating one-to-one, really getting in there, really getting people to understand where you're at, where you're coming from, openness, clarity, and taking on all the concerns head on. Number 2 is recognizing the emotions, showing a heavy level of empathy and support for what's necessary in a highly evocative and emotional moment, validating the feelings of your team members. I think that's an important piece. Maybe if there's a verse that's added which has Moses validating the emotional state of the people here, maybe that helps. I have no idea. Maybe the notion of understanding and appreciating what it is that they want to do and why it is that they want to do what they want to do. Maybe that's enough. Seeing them for who they are and where they are and what's going on in their moments. So again, first is transparent communication. 2 is recognizing the emotion. 3 is unity through involvement. Getting them involved in the decision-making process. Having them evaluating in a sort of a collaborative environment how this is going to work, how this might not work, what could they do differently, what could be a better approach here. 4 is sharing a clear vision, understanding what the long-term goals are and what maybe the long-term benefit is going to be for them staying in the desert. It's going to be really hard because it goes against all the logic and everything that they were going to be about, which is going into the land. And now it's shifting to appreciating preparing the next generation to go into the land and getting them aligned and motivated for this new mission. And last but not least is trust building, ensuring that they have consistent action and there's visible leadership maintaining some level of credibility and integrity through their engagement, getting people involved in this, bringing in leaders. Maybe you have to bring in some of the princes and some of the tribal leaders into this conversation now, because this is affecting every single one of them. And maybe managing this dissension in a slightly different manner maybe avoids the war that's going to take place. Maybe gets the people on side with God. Maybe we avoid all of the coming dissension and rebellion and power struggle that's coming in the weeks to come by simply averting it at the earliest moments, by taking a step back, by breathing and appreciating what it is that's happening and not happening for the people in that moment, and maybe doing it differently. To appreciate that managing dissension is a complex but truly an essential part of leadership. And we're learning from this story and applying these principles, we can get teams to get through these moments of difficulty, of these moments of resistance, and ultimately the team can emerge stronger. And to appreciate this is a great quote from Viktor Frankl: when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That is Coaching the Bible for this week. I look forward, as always, to seeing you next week as we close in on episode 200.